arbitration and collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law were discussed. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you would all please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. In the event of an emergency, please use the emergency exits located in the back of the room and head out to the assembly areas located out in the grass and stay away from the building until towards the end. You are not allowed to laugh. Sorry. Please follow directions of school officials. Once assembled outside the building, everyone must wait until an off here is given by the school official or before re-entering the building. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Anastasia Ballard. Here. Donald McCain.
Here.
Michael Murillo.
Here.
James McKenna.
Here.
Jacqueline Robinson.
Here.
Cindy Sherwood Dudley. Here. Charles Simon. Here.
Have there been any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, consent agenda item 11.30 has been added to the agenda. The personnel items 13.01A, 13.02B, and C have been added to the agenda.
Thank you. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. here in the Intermediate School Music Room, and it will be the work session meeting. There is no school tomorrow, October 9th, for observance of Yom Kippur, and the district will be closed on Monday, October 14th. Homecoming week will be October 15th to 19th. The homecoming pep rally and bonfire will be held, weather permitting, on Thursday, October 17th, after the boys varsity soccer games versus Mattatuck at 6:30. The homecoming parade will be held on Friday, October 18th, with parade lineup at 5 p.m. in Agawam Park. The parade will end at Southampton High School, and the varsity homecoming football game will be held at 6 p.m. versus Seven Ledges. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. Dr. Dinah, would you like to introduce the program presentations?
We have homecoming on the website. Parents can enroll the information.
I think it's on there.
I don't think it's on there yet because I just got it.
Okay.
So I'm going to be adding that tomorrow.
Is it in the front or like how parents?
It'll be on the calendar. It'll be on individual things on the calendar, and I'll create a news item on the high school website.
Okay, thank you.
It is listed as homecoming week on the calendar already, so, but not.
You know, the
the
specific
events,
thing
yeah,
that they
not
want
in
to
this.
know.
So, Mrs. Robinson, there are two presentations tonight. The first one is something we talked about earlier in the year, which is going to be the impact study related to our curriculum review cycle. And then the second one is just going to give the board a short update on where we are with enrollment now that we've reached 20 days into the school year. So I'd like to start with Ms. McGovern and Mrs. Wicker regarding our impact study and the study and the presentation that they titled, Here's What, So What, Now What.
Hi, everybody.
I'm just going to ask, you're going to need to use a microphone. I can give you
Yeah.
one from here so that Jackie can get it up too.
How's that? Is that good?
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for having us tonight. We figured you've heard a lot about the curriculum over the course of the past couple of years. It comes up in conversation quite often, but we thought it might be helpful for us to explain to you how we're progress monitoring the work that we're doing and what it is that we're using to evaluate the program and how it's rolling out and how it's affecting the other content areas besides just social studies. So I think in front of you, everybody has a packet that says Southampton School District. That's a very rough draft of the impact study that we're working with. Our curriculum guru is Angela Layler. She works with LCI, and so as part of the work that she's doing with us, she's conducting this impact study to make sure that, like I said, we're progress monitoring. So just to give you an idea of why we're doing what we're doing and what it is that we're trying to accomplish, there's three primary goals for us as we're going through this curriculum and instruction sort of revision cycle. Of course, at the center of everything, our biggest priority is that we want to improve student learning. And learning being the important word, not performance, because we really want to make sure that we're creating kids that are motivated and excited to learn, learning being the key here. We want to empower educators. We want to make sure that we're improving teacher efficacy, that everything we're doing for all the time that they're spending out of the classroom, for all of the dollars of Southampton taxpayers that are being spent, that we're making sure that we are improving teacher practice. And last but certainly not least is the idea of building equity. And we haven't spoken much about this in terms of the work that we're doing, but at the heart of everything that we're trying to accomplish is the idea that we're going to build equity through this curriculum and through the new instructional practices.
So, as Virginia and I have been speaking over the past couple of years, this triangle has become very predominant in our mode of thinking because it dovetails exactly what we're trying to accomplish. So on one side of the triangle is the curriculum, which is what Virginia is talking about in terms of the impact study and also the subject matters, content areas that are being focused on. This year we're focusing on math, last year we focused on science, and 2 years ago we focused on social studies. That's not to say that the work isn't continuing, but they're at different stages. But with the curriculum, we're building the equity, and on the other side is the instruction. So the curriculum is only as good as the delivery of the instruction. So with people like Susie Pepper-Rollins, who was just here previously this week, who's returning to us in 2 weeks, that's going to help to forge something that is really going to solidify what the intent is. And then what the whole framework is resting on is the social emotional learning piece. Now that sounds like a buzzword. A lot of schools are talking about SEL, but the key understanding is that if we're doing it with fidelity and we're having teachers understand what it is to create an equitable lesson or design an equitable curriculum, then we are really actually doing the service to the students, which is in the middle of the triangle, which is the student achievement. So Virginia put the jazzy little arrows with the build equity, improve student learning, empower educators. It really is connected, and the more that we recognize that as the community and as we recognize that as staff, then the students are going to recognize it as well.
Nancy, can I just ask you to remind us what equity means in this sense?
Equity means that we are having a working understanding. It's not just lip service, but a working understanding about our audience. We need to know who it is that we are teaching, what the value systems are that are being brought in by that audience, and also how we're preserving their value systems, as well as enlightening everybody to bring their own views to the conversation. It's not so much a one-centered type of view when we're looking at the curriculum. It's really hearing a lot of the voices that are represented in our student body.
Thank you so much.
Somewhat related to the question you just asked. It's the idea that throughout this process, the curriculum cycle has sort of shown a light on some areas of weakness or some areas that we need improvement. Identifying areas that hinder student opportunities to engage in deep learning, making sure that we're overcoming barriers that are preventing kids from deep dives into things that are interesting to them, providing with the opportunity to interact with the community and have real life experiences. We were just talking about the new shop program at the high school. That's an excellent nod towards equity. The work that we've done in terms of having the heterogeneous groupings for 9th and 10th grade, the pathway model that the math design team has developed that you're going to hear about at the next board meeting or in November, the move to make dual language universal in kindergarten. These are all areas that are helping us break down some of the barriers to equity that we've had, and the curriculum work is giving us an opportunity to really dive deeply into some of the issues that we've struggled with. Improving our learning environments, clearly articulating learning targets so the kids know what is expected of them, having assessments that are aligned to the work the kids are doing so they know the expected outcomes, they know what they have to work to achieve. Becoming a truly standards-based curriculum and making sure that all of the teachers on every grade level and every department are working towards common goals has been integral to this work, and it's going to be very beneficial in terms of us building an equitable learning environment for all of our students.
I just wanted to say something about the last tag there in terms of the gradual release, implementing a gradual release of responsibility. This has become a major import. If we're allowing kids to deeply think about what it is that they're learning, and we're giving them the independence to be thinkers, then the gradual release of that responsibility, the trust then of the teachers, we're trusting the teachers to do their job with a well-founded curriculum and good modes of instruction, then they're trusting the kids to be able to have some of that responsibility. So that's really a key and one of the frameworks that we're working with the teachers also this year.
So this is the part that's new to your ears. We've been partaking in this impact study since we started doing the design work with the social studies design team, which is getting on near 2 full years ago. We started our 3rd year. So for the impact study, who are the participants? It is everybody who is working with the new social studies curriculum. We're particularly focusing on the students and the teachers in grades 3, 6, and 9, and anybody who participated on the social studies design team. Now, this particular impact study for the social studies is being overseen by Angela Layler, but Larry Gemiola from Pecana Teacher Center is overseeing the impact study for the science design team with Kim Milton and for the math design team with John Wendt. And we will do the same thing with Katie Schreck when the ELA design team starts. How or what we're doing, we're giving pre and post assessments in 3rd, 6th, and 9th grade to monitor the kids' understanding of the historical thinking skills. We're also conducting surveys at the end of units for the teachers and for the students. And there are interviews that are taking place for the design team participants and also for some of the students. We didn't do any of the student interviews last year. The student interviews will be new this year. When do we do it? We do it at the beginning of the year and the end of the year for the skills assessments. And we're doing the surveys and the interviews at the end of each of the 6 units of study that we're conducting for each of the grade levels. And why are we doing it? It's for the purposes of gathering feedback. We've learned throughout this process that the most important thing you can give students for their learning process is feedback. And we're learning from that also. So we're looking to get feedback in all different areas. Gathering student data, tracking student progress, supporting teacher needs, improving curriculum design process, integrating instructional pedagogy work with the curriculum, and monitoring progress and success. So this is important. The new data dashboard that we've adopted, we're excited. We want to be able to put the social studies historical thinking skills assessments onto the platform for Unified Classroom so that we can track it. It will be part of the kids' baseball card. We'll know how they're doing. It's progress monitoring. Previously, we've talked about it. The first time we find out how a kid's doing in social studies is 10th grade when they take the Regents, and by then it's too late. So by participating in this impact study and by having the kids complete these 3, 6, 9 skills assessments, it gives us an earlier read on how they're doing and how they're progressing in social studies. The other piece that's important for us this year is that the work of the instructional coaches, the work of the curriculum liaisons, and the work of the PLCs is really starting to become integrated. So what that means is that as we're getting feedback, and you'll see the feedback we had from the survey on what teachers need to focus on, they're able to bring that to the instructional coaches. The instructional coaches are able to develop that pedagogy. And then, since we have student work that's being produced that has targeted goals, that's the work of the PLCs. The PLCs are able to look at and examine student work. The social studies PLCs can look through the lens of the historical thinking skills and decide where our strengths and where our weaknesses are. So it's beneficial because it's really bringing the 3 main parts of the puzzle together for us. In front of you in that survey that I referred you to, if you look at page 4 and 5 of the report, it's a logic model. This is the so what. This is the how we're conducting the impact study. I'm not going to go through all of the nitty gritty with you now. I just want to point out to you that there are short-term outcomes, interim outcomes, and long-term outcomes. That these are goals that are SMART goals. They have look-fors, there's progress monitoring, there's ways for us to judge how we're progressing. We obviously have a long-term plan, and we know what we want success to look like. But rather than waiting 5 years to see if it's going well, we're able to do these short-term progress monitoring things in between. And that's some of what I've already mentioned to you. I don't know if you guys look at it, if you have questions, if you want us to respond to your questions. I don't want to read it to you. You're more than capable of reading it on your own. And if you have any questions after tonight, when you've had a chance to digest it, we'll be happy to answer them for you also. You okay with that if I move on to the next part of it?
Yeah.
So let's get into the numbers and what the impact study is saying. And I want to point out a couple of things. I'm not here because it's all good news. It's positive, definitely. We're trending upward. But we're not here just to present to you the things that you want to hear. We want to show you the reality of the work and how it's going. The information that you're about to see was presented to the Social Studies Design team and the third grade teachers 2 weeks ago at a department meeting. It was a great conversation. It was led by Angela Layler. She gave us the opportunity to dig through the data that was from last year. We've also already given the pre-assessment for this year, and the third grade and the sixth grade has been tabulated. And I'm meeting with the third grade teachers and the sixth grade teachers to go over the results so that it can impact their instruction for this year. And then the ninth grade exam should be done within the next week. First result on the teacher surveys, which if you want to look more closely at it, is going to be on page 6 of your impact study. But the numbers are good. The numbers are positive. They're very reaffirming. 75% of teachers on the Social Studies Design team reported that they have a deeper understanding of social studies practices and historical thinking skills, learning targets as a result of being a member of the Social Studies Design team. That's huge. When we started this process, we said there's no way we can expect the kids to have a deep understanding of what they're learning if the teachers don't have a deep understanding of what they're teaching. So the fact that we've shown that kind of growth over the course of 1 or 2 years is very positive. 50 to 75% of the teachers reported that they have a better understanding of the social studies conceptual understandings. That's like the New York State standards. And then how to do standards alignments and formative assessments and performance-based assessments. Now, again, this is self-reporting. It's a qualitative measure and not a quantitative measure, but it is positive because it's sort of like the economy. If you feel good, you're going to go out and spend money. If teachers are feeling good about the work that's taking place, it's contagious. They're going to want to continue to work hard. They're going to want to continue to spread the news. As Nancy calls it, the secret handshake. Everybody wants to get on the secret handshake. They want to be part of the design team because they want to sort of feel the success that the social studies design team has felt. 87% reported they've made changes to their practices. That's what you get out of long-term, consistent professional development. We've moved past the era of the one and done, where you go out and you go to a workshop and then you come back and maybe you talk about it, you're excited about it for 3 days, but then you forget. The fact that we're in people's faces so readily, so consistently, the fact that their weekly PLC meetings and their opportunities with instructional coaches and faculty meetings are being used for this is really driving home the idea that this is here to stay, and it's giving people the opportunity to try, to err, to fail, to try again, and succeed, and that's been a really positive process for us.
Also, you need to know that because we're in the third content area this year, you find that the math design team is now talking to the social studies design team. The social studies teacher's like, no, it's good, relax, it's all right. And the same thing with the science, and then they see that the proof is of the interest level of what's going on, or how they're kind of galvanizing as content area teachers. Even at the elementary school, although they're more general practitioners, they're finding that they can relate to the structure of what happened in social studies and apply it to science and math. So it's really a way that we're all elevating our language about the design of what we're doing and the instruction.
And that's that number. 86% of teachers saying that there's a norm of continuous improvement is tremendous. That's just very positive overall. Now the student surveys. So at the end of last year, we asked the students in 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade that had participated in the pre and post assessments. And this is on page 6 to 9 of your impact study. We asked them to complete surveys. There were a number of questions that were specifically directed at the historical thinking skills that they were asked to learn, and they responded to that. And then there was questions asking them to rate their learning. And Angela chose to use a star rating, like a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, and so on, because we felt that it was relevant to the kids, and that especially when you're asking third graders to kind of report on their learning, that would be a good way to go about. So 70% of, and we have grade levels A, B, and C, just so that we're not, specifically calling out any one grade level. But if you look at the numbers, you can sort of tell the elementary school is a happy-go-lucky bunch. 70% of the kids reported that they were engaged in their learning. 54% of students gave their social studies class a 5-star rating. 24% gave it a 4-star rating. So if you look at that, you're saying that 78% of kids in the elementary school or in the third grade, grade A, are saying that they were engaged and that they thought that their learning overall was positive. They also rated their their social studies class, right, and then their learning overall. So they were able to rank the enjoyment that they got out of, or the engagement that they had in their social studies classes, and then also how they felt their learning was. And interestingly enough, which is something we have to work on, overall, the kids rated their learning much more highly than the teachers rated the kids' learning. So anybody that knows Hattie knows that teachers believing in students is a part of the positive impact you have in classes. We have to get our teachers to realize that they're doing a better job than they think they are, because the kids are more engaged and the kids are learning more than the teachers are reporting they feel is taking place. Again, positive trends, 52%, 51% generally saying that they were engaged in their learning. As you move to the upper grades, that little bit of a drop is somewhat expected. There's definitely room for growth there. But in terms of the percentages, again, you have 89% of kids saying that they rank their learning as 4 or 5 stars. So we take that to be positive in terms of the engagement and overall satisfaction. Let's be real, the kids are our customers. We want customer satisfaction, and these numbers make us think that they're going to keep coming back. And last, but not least, is the one quantitative, data that we have as far as this goes. And this is a place where we can see that there's room for growth. Some grade levels did better than other grade levels, and this is where we're getting the bulk of our information for how we're going to move forward. Grade level A had minor increases in terms of their overall understanding of the historical thinking skills. But one thing that should be noted was at the beginning of the year, when we gave this assessment, there were a number of tiers. The reading that was on it was difficult for the third graders. They weren't able to complete it independently. The teachers had to stop. They had to read the passage out loud, and they had to work through the questions with the kids. At the end of the year, that was not the case. Many of the kids were able to complete it independently. There were no tiers. The teachers did not have to stop and go through it. So even though the percentage-wise, the numbers don't look like there was a tremendous spike, the overall experience for the kids was positive, and we thought that was beneficial. Grade level B knocked it out of the park. They had tremendous increase and tremendous growth in their understanding of the historical thinking skills. Largely, we're going to attribute that to a lot of the work that the instructional coaches did, and the fact that the teachers took risks and started using stations and more meeting-making activities with the students. And the other place that was important was that we saw greater growth in mastery in this grade level. So it's enough, it's good, it's great that we're improving, but we really need to see an increase in our mastery and our proficiency. And that was someplace that grade level B sort of thrived. And then for grade level C, it gets more difficult. Third grade is only responsible for 3 historical thinking skills. 6th grade, they get up to 5, and then 9th grade, they're covering all the historical thinking skills, so they're more spread out. The concentration of their instruction isn't targeted quite so much, but they still did show improvement. And the positive here was that across the board, all 3 grade levels showed improvement. We didn't have a steady, or a stay even or a decline, which, we'll take that as a win. Do you have any questions on that? I'm going over some of the highlights. Again, when you have the opportunity to digest the figures that are in front of you, if you have more questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you, or if you want to get into any specifics with the columns or how it was conducted.
So when Angela shared this impact study with the social studies staff, some of their conclusions or their self-reflection was very similar to what we're speaking to about tonight. So their next step in this journey with the curriculum design for people that are 2 years in is that looking at the assessments and how they're managing that, and also how they're disseminating information to the kids, how they're trusting the kids to be the deeper thinker. So these, I'm confident But these, numbers will again begin to creep up, particularly in the 6th and the 9th grade, because what's happening is the level of understanding that's happening in the 3rd grade is going to carry over into the 4th and the 5th grade that we didn't have necessarily in the past when we did this before.
Related to that, we were excited to see the results from the 369 exams this year, because last year they were tabula rasa. When we gave those pre-assessments, it really was sort of, starting out and the kids were somewhat blank slates. This year, we're looking for the performance on the pre-assessment to be better, because that would indicate success in 2nd grade, 5th grade, and 8th grade, if that makes sense to you. So we're hoping, we may see less growth this year, but that would be great because that means that the kids are starting at a higher level. So what do we do with it? Now that we have this information, how are we using it? It's one thing to be data rich and knowledge poor, right? That's been our problem in the past. So how are we taking the information from the pre and post assessments? How are we taking the information from the surveys? And how are we turning it into something tangible that we're going to move forward with? So for the teachers on the social studies design team, this was the areas that we came up with to work on. And this is what was presented to them. Sean Zay is now the social studies curriculum liaison. Peter Lubinoff is in charge of the PLC, which is the 5 through 12 group for social studies teachers. So in the PLC meetings, in the social studies design team sessions, in the in all of the grade level basically meetings in the elementary school, these are the areas that we're targeting and focusing on. Teachers using learning targets and aligning their learning targets to formative assessment. We can't use these two phrases enough. This is the cornerstone, this is the building block, this is for science, this is for math, this is for ELA, this is for art, this is for everything that we do. We need to make sure that we have clearly defined learning targets and that our assessments, especially our formative assessments, are aligned to those learning targets. The teachers know that they have to engage in the examination of the pre-assessment, make sure that they really understand where their students are lacking so that they know how to fill those gaps. And it sounds easy, but examining student work and being able to look at it and extrapolate a theme as to what's going well and what needs work is something that is more difficult than you would realize. And that's something that we need continued work on. It is the aim of the PLCs, so that's going to be a bulk of their focus. And for social studies, it's going to be around the historical thinking skills. For science, it's around their practices. For math, it's around lifelong practices of a mathematician, whatever it's called. So when we get together as liaisons and coaches, that's the language we're speaking. We're looking for continuity and we're looking for similarities between those skills so that the kids are hearing consistent language in all of their subject areas so that they know that if they're doing compare and contrast, whether it's in math or science or social studies, we're asking them to get at the same basic skill. So this information is informing the work of the science and the math design teams as well. And last but not least, continued professional development and instructional strategies that engage students in their own learning. That gets back to that deep understanding. That gets back to equity. It gets back to meeting students at their entry point and making sure that we're not teaching in a deficit model. We don't want to say you can't do this, so now you got to figure out how to do it. We want to celebrate what they can do and then build on those strengths. And that's really what the model is based on.
Well, it's not really a triangle anymore, now it's a circle because it was late for me and Virginia to keep working on that triangle. So when we were talking about the triangle and morphing it now, we have that instruction, the professional development, and the curriculum. It's still very much dovetailed, and the professional development is constant, and it's the one that's away from that piece because it does have to help to inform and direct the instruction and the curriculum writing. So it's a really big part, and it is continual. Also with the professional development, what's going to be embedded in that as well is that when you're creating a learning target, it's not arbitrary. Learning targets are married to the standards because the standards are what drives the bus for each grade level. What does the child have mastery of? And how are we applying that mastery for the next year? And how are we getting that student to mastery of those standards? So it's something that is tied in that can't really be teased out completely, but it's also something that we have to highlight separately so that the teachers as well as the other stakeholders understand where it is that we're going.
The last point I want to make, and Jill Calvo is in the audience tonight. She's a member of the social design team, and when we were meeting last week, it was a healthy conversation. And if you know anything about high school social studies teachers, they're healthy skeptics. Brian can attest to that. And so one of the points that she brought up was, how do we know that this isn't just a typical amount of growth that would take place if we were sitting there reading them a textbook? It was a great point, and we don't know. And that's one of the things that's difficult. We were just talking about education. You always have a different group of students in front of you. You always have a different cohort. There's always a different set of circumstances. In terms of having baseline data, we never tested the kids' social studies skills at the beginning of the year and the end of the year in the elementary school when we weren't concentrating on teaching social studies. Last year, they had the opportunity to have social studies just about 30 to 40 minutes a day. This year, it's flipping over because we're doing science and social studies shared on a rotating basis. So even the numbers this year, if the growth isn't quite as significant, we don't know that it's attributed to the curriculum model not working. It could be because of the shared time or the minutes. So those are all very healthy questions, and they're questions that I think we'll continue to seek answers to. But I think the proof is in the pudding when you start to talk to the kids and when you start to talk to the teachers. And I encourage you as board members to do that, to just come around and see what's going on and see the learning that's taking place, talk to the teachers, especially the ones that have been here for a while, because it's different than just feeling good. I think there's a palpable difference in the learning that's taking place. And if you have conversations with kids about what they're doing in class, especially what the elementary school is doing with science this year, it's very exciting. I have to say, Kim Milton and Andrew DeLeo, who's the art teacher in the elementary school, the things that they're putting together and the way that they're working with the elementary school teachers to really roll out the science curriculum tremendously successfully. And the schedule that Jamie and Anna developed and the changes that we've made have all been so positive. And so I think as we continue to monitor this progress, we're going to see growth. We're going to see positive results in terms of state testing and region scores. But that's not going to be the only measure. I think genuinely when you have the conversation with the kids about how their learning is being impacted, that's where you're going to really start to see the value-added measure to all of this work that's going on. And I have to say also, Thomas Capalbo is in the audience, who's a current kindergartner. And when we started this whole entire thing, we sort of had his picture on the board, and we said, if we do this right, because he was in pre-K at the time, then when he's a senior, we're going to know that we've reaped, the fruits of our labor. So it's actually kind of cool that he's here, because I think he's going to be our poster child for this curriculum work. He's very interested in his Lego book right now. Do you folks have any questions for us, or anything you'd like us to clarify?
I thank you for your great presentation. You answered my question regarding curriculum models. So if anybody else has any questions. And Thomas, I'm wondering, are you getting community service for being here tonight? I hope so.
Start his portfolio early. Anybody else have questions?
I have just one question. So good. This is really such good work, and it gets me so excited about education, real learning. The only question I have, and maybe you did address it, but I missed it, is how are we communicating, and I know this came up before, how are we communicating all these amazing things so that parents are aware of what's happening? And, just in general or specific, or if there's, one area that we're talking about.
That's an excellent question, and it's the stakeholders. The parents are the one stakeholder that we haven't done a good job of getting this information out to. So we've met with Dr. Dino, and we've asked for permission to come up with a model for curriculum nights. So the way that would work would be, the first couple would be informative, informational, giving them an idea of just how we build the curriculum, what a learning target is, what an essential question is, why are we using inquiry, what is a big idea, just to make people familiar with the vocabulary that we're using. And then from there, what we'd like to see happen is have different nights where we have science design team members or math design team members come and actually work with parents in more of like a workshop session, so that they could really start to understand. As a parent of a kindergartner and somebody that's living it on the other end, I've spoken to Jill about us getting a focus group out of like the PTO from the elementary school and the middle school to see what kind of questions the parents would have about the curriculum and what kinds of things we could provide for them that would make it more tangible for them. One of the goals and priorities that I think we share is to make sure that we get some of this information available on the website sooner rather than later. They don't need to have access to the curriculum documents to see how the sausage is made, but we think it would be very easy or very beneficial, I shouldn't say easy, it's actually quite difficult, for parents in kindergarten to know the kids are studying butterflies, or for them to know that they're talking about continents and oceans, so that there can be a conversation had at home, to sort of bring in that last stakeholder that we've neglected. So I think as the year develops, I would hope by December the latest, we would have our first parent night to sort of bring folks in, and then, Anna Martinez has a nice model of the way she does things to bring parents in and sort of take some of the things we've done that have been successful, that have brought parents in, and try to open up that conversation.
Anastasia, we've had conversations about this too. It goes beyond the cupcake, right? Parents really want to be involved in the level of learning that the kids are doing. So the more that, again, the teachers trust the children to be deeper thinkers, that's going to extend to the family, because we want to give the parents the information, or particularly on the website, or some avenue where they can ask other questions of their kids, or ask a deeper question of the teacher, and the teacher can, answer that in a more conversational way. I'm charged up about the idea of curriculum nights only because it does extend. It's not about the minutia that goes on in the schools, but the nitty gritty what's going on in the classroom. So hopefully we'll be able to present that, in the near future as we plan it.
Can I add to that? I would love to be part of, sorry, I'm so sorry. I would love to help you guys in some way to be part of getting consent from the parents to conduct the impact study and help you in that way, so that we can maybe work together on those kind of nights, because when kids are younger, parents are involved, but they don't know the extent of studies. And so therefore, I think it's important that they know and that they're involved.
Yeah, I agree with Jeannie, that's great.
Dr. Dino, you have.
Yeah, I just have two clarifying questions, let me turn it over to the members of the board. When Jill asked your question about what would be the difference, how do we know if it's because of the curriculum or if it's because of reading the textbook in front of the class? But with student engagement, that would be the telling tale, because the way we're doing it, students are reporting with great engagement results. That might not be there if someone's just reading the text. So I think that's one way to tell that what we're doing is having an impact.
Right, we don't see it in the assessment, but we can
Correct.
see it in the engagement.
Correct. The other thing I wanted to ask is, last year when we were doing the rollout for the first time, teachers were a little bit anxious because making sure they had the right supplies, the right materials. I'm asking, this anxiety level a little bit lower this year, and is the implementation a little bit easier for teachers?
I think we were more proactive with science because we understood the position that we put social studies teachers in without having specific resources.
Yeah.
It's also the importance of making sure that there are resources that meet our needs and aren't driving the curriculum. I think the anxiety level is certainly lower this year than it was last year. We're still lacking and limited in resources that are available in Spanish. I'm going to say it in fairness for dual language in the elementary school. So the middle school is covered now. We got a great series from National Geographic for the social studies. It's available in English and Spanish. There's tremendous resources. That's going well. That's sort of quell some of the issues. In the elementary school, I think they're feeling better about some of what they have for social studies. The Science Nat Geo program that we bought is fantastic, and that's helping. But their resources and materials that were supposed to be released in Spanish by the end of the summer haven't been released yet, and it's been pushed back to January. So I think that still does cause a little bit of angst for the grade levels that are teaching science in Spanish. There's still a gap there.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Just want to say, I really appreciate you I just wanted to say I really appreciate you putting this information together. There's a lot of data here, and statistics that I'm going to need a little more time to really look at it and absorb it, because I am interested in the teachers' input on the evaluations, as well as the implementation, execution of the social studies curriculum and the other two, as well as the feedback we've gotten from the students and their perception. So I really appreciate it. It's going to be some good reading for me, and I'm sure I'll have some questions.
That'd be great.
Will this be available on the website? Can you post it?
This will be available. We'll send it to Amy. This is still in draft form, so it's not official. So, but this will be available.
One question. Can you explain, as a result, we've had a great presentation of the Native American curriculum. How has that worked its way into, now that you're implementing everything, how has that worked? What's the plan? What's happening there?
it's being seen in, it's not an abstract anymore in terms of social studies. So it is become, or it has become part that is more integrated into the learning activities that the students are doing. We're not there yet. There's still room for growth. I also met with Brenda Simmons, who I know was at a board meeting a couple of weeks ago, I think, to ask the question about the Purist concert stuff. So there's 100% room for growth, but what you're seeing is much more integration. What was nice was when Kim Milton and I were able to sit down and work on the science and the social studies integration for the elementary school. The emphasis on the science opened up so many more pathways for us to be able to include the Native American learning activities that were created as part of that unit. So it's early on in the year yet. You're seeing it more probably in the 4th grade and the 2nd grade than anywhere else right now in terms of the study of geography, the study of my community, and then for 4th grade, it's the New York State learning standards. But we were just having this conversation today with Susie Pepper, who's from Georgia, and they have a strong Cherokee presence, and Angela Hughes Johnson was at the meeting. Like, it makes no sense that you're teaching New York State history, you're talking about Native Americans, and you're talking about the Iroquois, and you're not talking about the Shinnecock. So it doesn't make any sense, and we were there for a while, and there's room for growth, but the opportunity and the ability for us to incorporate it has been there. We're gonna do a better job this year than we did last year. Lisa Bowen's been a tremendous resource in the elementary school, because now that she knows, and Kim Milton's been doing a great job of letting people know what's coming up for the next week and the week after that, Lisa's really been able to provide opportunities for further research, and she's been able to share with the teachers resources that are available in different areas. So that's been tremendous. So we're seeing an upwards progress, but we're certainly not there yet. There's a lot of room for growth in that area. And there's other ways and other things that we're working on in terms of how we're incorporating it. So I would say we're still about a year or two off from me having a concrete, solid, confident, happy answer for you, but we're definitely, we're trending upwards. I don't know, is that answer your question?
That's 100%. I just wanted to see where that was at.
It has been forgotten. The same thing for Brenda, is like that conscious effort. We explained that in terms of Purist concert, what's difficult is because he's not mentioned in New York State standards, the teachers were wrapping their heads around the New York State standards last year, so it was hard for them to see where they had opportunities to interject. And now that they've gotten comfortable with it, they've done it for a year, there are obvious places where he should appear in our curriculum, so it's gonna be more possible. I also think the opportunity for field trips, especially walking field trips and getting out in the area, has become more positive. So the opportunity to take the kids to Shelter Island, where there's a house Roberta Hunter had introduced us to, that was slave quarters and has everything, that's there. So that's another thing that we have planned for this year, that's really sort of giving the kids the opportunity to, again, have more real world experiences, interact with the community, and have it be more tangible for them.
Mr. Garber, the one thing I wanted to cover that you didn't mention is something we talked about a little bit ago. Dr. Zahn brought up when he was doing his regents reports, were the scores on the new social studies regents that just happened in June, and that affirmed kind of that what we're doing is in line with the standards. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I left the numbers in my book bag. Off the top of my head, I want to say on the new framework, which is sort of the test we've been preparing for, New York State put out new social studies standards sometime around 2012, 2013 that we all sort of adopted and started using, but they didn't change the regents until just last June for global studies, and this June will be the first time for United States history. So that's what we've been preparing for. So in terms of the results on that exam, I believe we were at 83% passing, which is out of 149 students who took it. That was definitely positive. The 83% passing is higher than what our passing rate has been on the global regions previously, the old framework, if you want to call it that. And also our mastery level improved. And Dr. Zahn, I don't know if you remember off the top of your head, but I want to say that our mastery level was somewhere around 19%. Was it 19? Which isn't fantastic, but it's certainly better than where it was previously. So when we give that test again in June, it'll be interesting to see if that trend continues. We've tried to compare it to the region and New York State, but BOCES hasn't provided data in terms of where we rank. So right now we're sort of comparing apples to oranges. For our own internals, those numbers look positive, but in terms of how we compare to the region and the state, which might be a better barometer of how successful we are, we don't have those figures just yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Governor.
Thank you, Thomas. John, are you going to put up the, do you have the enrollment study? Yes. Superintendent's report? There you go. If you can make it a little bit bigger. I just wanted to give the board, as I mentioned, a little bit of an update, and I think you have a paper copy in front of you. As you know, we've approached, on Friday was our 20th day of school. So that 20th day is important to us because what we have to look for on the 20th day is who are students who are on our roster that have not yet attended, and how does that impact our enrollment, because we have to follow up with where those students are now located, and have they transferred, have they moved out of country, have they registered at a new school that hasn't contacted us yet, and we have to do the follow-up to those students. So I wanted to give you an idea of the numbers. And I will tell you this is the first year where Beds Day happened before the 20th day. So Beds Day was early this year, the way the school calendar fell. So Beds Day happened to be Wednesday, and the 20th day was Friday. So you see a little bit of variation between Beds Day numbers and 20th day numbers. But I just want to bring a couple highlights to you. Our pre-K numbers, as you remember, we were worried about pre-K back in the beginning of the year. During summertime, we had like 46 kids. We started the school year with 54. We're now up to 62. And I think that's been steady, as you see, since October 1st. So we think the 62 is probably the number we're going to land in the 60s for the remainder of the school year. So that's up 8 since the beginning of the school year. So that's a good improvement from where we thought we would be. The other thing that's noteworthy is if you look at 10th grade, we're up 5 students from where we were at the beginning of the school year. Our total number of students right now is 1,539, so 1,539 students. If we compare that to where we were at the end of last year, we're down 40 students. But now I want you to consider a couple of other things. If you see the notes, John, I don't know if you can make the notes a little bit bigger on the bottom. There are 9 students. There are 9 students of that 1,539 who are at the high school who have not been accounted for 20 consecutive days. So Dr. Zahn has done some work today, and some of those students are now planning to attend our alternative program. I believe others with the guidance counselor to follow up to find out where they are. But there's a possibility that we'll have a reduction of up to 9 students from the high school program when we follow through on this. The other thing that's noteworthy is we have 4 students who we had to exclude from school because of their immunization status. And these students are on our rosters because although the parents understand that the students can attend their schools, parents have not homeschooled them or relocated to another place, they're just not attending. So it's my duty to keep informing the parents that they have to take some action. If students are compulsory age, they need to be in school. So when they reach the 20-day mark on when since they've been excluded from school, I will need to notify CPS and do the follow-up that we have to with the health department and CPS to make sure those students are getting educated. So if we were to take away 9 and 4 students, it brings us down to 1,526 as students, which represents 53 student reduction from where we ended last school year. I'm not sure we're going to be there, but there's a possibility that we might. Now, when we look at a percentage, if you remember the enrollment percentage when we had the enrollment study done, we predicted we would lose approximately 5% of students this year. Where we are right now, we're down 3.3% of students of where we ended last year and where we are currently. So we'll see if the prediction of 5% carries out, if it's too high, if it's too low, we'll see as the year plays out. But remember, they predicted a reduction of 20% over 10 years, and with 5% in year 1. So we're not quite seeing that yet. We'll see how accurate it is as the years go on, as the year goes on. That's all I have for the enrollment report. Unless anyone has any questions.
I had a question.
Sure, go ahead.
You keep saying how we ended last year, but is it fair to compare October to a June at the end of the year, or where were we at, let's say, last October?
Well, why we
And do we gain kids over the year, or do we lose kids?
Well, why I use the ending number as the kind of the baseline is because those are students who are living in our community who we knew we educated through the end of June. So the question is, where are they now? So that's why I don't use the ones who were in October. They could have moved out during the school year. So the fair comparison of where we are now is where we were when the school year ended last year.
And what about throughout the school year? Do we usually lose or gain, like, what?
We
what's the
typically lose some students in the winter. Some students, go back to their home countries and are gone for 6 weeks.
So usually you're down,
We're usually
by-
down, but we gain in
by
the
June.
spring.
but you gain.
In the spring,
Right.
right, so there's not a consistent pattern of, a trend of students that were down every October and we're up every January, and then down again in May.
Right.
There's really not a consistent pattern.
And the 9 kids, they just haven't attended 20 consecutive days. They may have attended a few days, or they may
No, they haven't,
have all been here.
right, we've reached the 20th day of school.
And they
have been
haven't
present
come.
any of the 20
Oh,
days.
okay.
And yet, many times, students move to another state or move to another country, and they don't contact the former school for records. So we don't know that until we have our counselors look into it and find out, through family members in different contexts, where the students might be. Yes,
Of these 40 students, is there any significant factor or trend that you notice?
well, what I do notice is if you look, our numbers are smaller, the younger the students are. So if you look at our class size at the intermediate school, it's all within the 90s, except for 6th grade, which is in 81. But you'll see 80s, 90s, 99, 95, 95. So upper grades in the elementary school are in the 90s. Lower grades, as you see, 3rd grade we're down to 80, 2nd grade 72, kindergarten we're up to 87. So it just seems that the smaller grades are a little bit smaller than the older grades.
Any particular demographics?
We're seeing fewer Caucasian kids than we have in the past. We're seeing an increase of Hispanic students than we have in the past. We're also seeing an increase in Asian students. And a reduction in African American students. Once I had a full half year's worth of data, I was going to try to put out the demographic trends.
Does any of this, part of this number represent, some of the negotiations that are going on with the Native American population?
Well, yes, if there are 40 students, we're down 40 students now. Remember, 20 students who were with us last year or were scheduled to be with us this year are now attending Tuckahoe. So it represents up to 40 students who were down from the end of last year. 20 were planned to travel to another school, 20 are just doing a reduction.
Thank you.
I just want to understand. Just,
Yes,
if those students were here, we were only within 20.
correct. 20 before we extract those students from the notes,
Right.
the 9 and the 4, correct.
And I just have one more question. The 4 students
Yes.
affected by the immunizations, is that multiple families?
No, it's actually 2 families.
I mean, that's an interesting concept because it really throws at 3.5%.
It does.
And compared to 5, and it's just.
It does, but again, we're not halfway through the school year yet.
Right. No, I understand. I'm just saying that, 40 and then you hit with 20 that wouldn't have been here.
Right.
And Mike?
Mike.
Yes.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Diana. At this time, public comments will be heard on agenda items only. The Board of Education encourages public participation on school-related matters and board meetings. Any group or organization that wishes to address the board must identify a single spokesperson. Presentation should be as brief as possible. No speaker will be permitted to speak longer than 3 minutes. The board will not permit in public session discussion involving individual district personnel or students. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. Obscene language, libelous statements, threats of violence, statements advocating racial, religious, or other forms of prejudice will not be tolerated. Persons making presentation at the board meeting will address remarks to the president and may direct questions or comments to board members or other district officials only upon approval of the president. Does anyone have any public comments at this time? Once, twice? All right. Superintendent's report.
Great, I have a couple items I want to bring to you. 3 exciting, 1 not so exciting. But I'm going to start with the not so exciting. On our next workshop meeting, what was scheduled was a special ed department update. But as you know, our special ed director has left us to return to Riverhead, so I'm going to change the topic of the October 22nd, the next workshop meeting. And I've replaced the special ed update, we'll have that later in the year, with a facilities update. The facilities committee, we met with, facilities committee, met with Marcus, and there's some pressing items that are happening in some of the buildings, including the marine wet lab, that we thought it would be a good idea for him to present to the full board to give direction on where we're going for the remainder of this year and through the summer of work that needs to be done. Any questions on that? So that, as well as I think Ryan has some students who will be presented at the October meeting. We have some.
Correct. We have students that are National Merit Award and nominated students that will be presenting.
Great. The three exciting items I wanted to talk about have to do with events that happened in the district over the past couple of weeks. We had three things that were really major events that were important to students, important to the district, and important to parents. One was the Wall of Distinction, which I'll talk about in a little while. The other was a forum that Brian held at the high school on vaping. And the third was the Frost Valley trip that happened here at the intermediate school. I'm going to start with Mr. Frazier and ask if he will talk a little bit about giving the board an update of how the trip went. Wherever you're comfortable.
First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Yes, it is very exciting, even though this happened very early in the school year. In fact, this is the earliest trip we've ever had to Frost Valley. Tonight, I asked Mrs. Gentili, my secretary, to come with me, and also Mr. Farrow, who is a 7th grade special education inclusion teacher. They're here tonight, and I'd like them to come up with me if that's okay with anybody.
You can get Roseanne to come up there.
I do. I think it's important because, again, this is a trip that takes a lot of energy and effort from lots of people, and I just wanted to highlight my secretary, who really took the initiative this year. After last year, we had a very large group go to Frost Valley in the spring, and everybody on that trip agreed that the fall was the best time to take students up to Frost Valley, and for lots of different reasons, a lot of social emotional reasons, but also the fact that it really ties into the curriculum for the rest of the year. And Roseanne really took an initiative and started that process with our 5th grade teachers and helping them do a fundraiser for the buses to take us up to Frost Valley, and also getting the information out to our 5th grade parents so that over the summer, a lot of the information was turned in, a lot of people were signed up, and a lot of the forms were filled out even before we started this school year. The second person is Pasquale, who last year was the coordinator for this trip at Frost Valley, who has been an inspiration to our whole staff of a teacher taking initiative and finding something that is very dear to them as a professional teacher and seeing the benefits of students. Of course, he's a 7th grade teacher, so he got a chance to actually get involved with all of our 6th grade students this year, and is looking forward to working with them next year, having had that experience at Frost Valley. So those are the two critical things that that we put in place by people who were really passionate about this trip that really made a difference for our students this year, and that's why I wanted to highlight there and to thank them for all the work they did this year. Great. The other part of this is, of course, about our students. And I have to tell you, at the intermediate school, we have an amazing group of students this year in all of our grades, but especially a group of 6th graders who are our smallest group in a long while, but really have come together through their 5th grade experience here to this 6th grade year and really showed that up at Frost Valley. And I have a couple of slides I just want to go through and show you. Again, this is the most valuable item up at Frost Valley. It is the Frost Valley sweatshirt, which you will see not only here, but it travels with students all the way through their college years. In fact, there was a national college presentation, I forget what university, but there was a Frost Valley t-shirt right in the middle of it. So it is something that our students take a lot of pride in. Every year it seems like a little different. Last year, the blue was really popular. This year, it was a tie-dye. But again, if students cannot afford this t-shirt, we provide that for them. That's one of the things about this trip that is so great about the fundraising we do and the support we get from our teachers and our community, is that we are making sure that all of our students have an equitable opportunity on this school trip. And Frost Valley does a great job for that. Here's one of the more popular items. It's a swinging bridge. It may look like it's simple with these students going across it, but it is a risk-taking experience. I can tell you from my own experience and the success of it and the the failures that I had trying to cross this swinging bridge over this running brook. Again, you look at it and you first go to, here's the adults on the trip. We had 3 parents go with us this year. Again, that's another difference from the past, but we've had as many as 20 parents join us for this trip. And I think that is really showing just ways that shows the changes in this trip, not only with our instructional staff, but also with our parent involvement, is because of the nature of our students and changes in demographics. A lot of our parents can't go on this trip because they are working, and it's hard for them to get off of work. That's different than the past. And also a lot of our instructional staff have other commitments that it's really difficult for them to take away from 3 days, 2 evenings with their families. So given all those circumstances, we're still trying to make it work the best we can. And this year was a great example of the success we've had by taking the time and making sure we have plenty of time for planning and thinking about ways in which we can encourage our instructional staff as well as our parents to go. This is called Devil's Hole. It will only take certain students down at a time to look into this depth and hopefully have some self-reflection as they do that. This is part of a hike we take. And every group gets a chance to go to Devil's Hole and take that hike during their 3 days experience. Next. This is part of the survival skills they learn. They have to actually build a shelter together as a team. And again, they put together some pretty amazing structures given the limited materials that they find in a certain time and space at Forest Valley. As you can see, the weather was very complimentary to us this year. Instead of it snowing on us, it actually rained, but we did have a very beautiful first day of sunshine and fair weather. Another example of those kind of nature trails there, they're just amazing. Here's, again, surviving skills, building a fire, and every student got a chance in their group to start from scratch to build a fire and kindle that spark. We divided into 6 different groups of students. This is Pamela Jordan, one of our new 6th grade teachers, who's our bilingual social studies teacher with an instructor there at Frost Valley. The Frost Valley provides instructors for our students. We do have a contract with Frost Valley, as I've talked to Jean many times about, that it's a little bit different than taking kids on a field trip over the day or over the night. It's actually an educational experience where we are contracting with them to teach and do exploring activities with our students. Salamanders, it's great to discover that on your own. This is a rock climbing wall inside. The reason they're inside is because it's pouring down raining outside. And it shows you the flexibility of Frost Valley of them being able to accommodate different groups in different climate situations. Hard days of work, and they are very tired. They will be going to sleep very soon. This is another activity of team building that goes on there, as well as instructional activities. There's also social and emotional activities to build trust and bond with each other in team activities. This is our group at the end of the 3-day experience. They look pretty fresh considering they've been up late at night and they've had a lot of fun. Another teacher that went with us was Mr. Maldonado, who is my dean of students. As you can see, what a great opportunity for him to get to know our 6th grade students. And this was his cabin crew. He was in snow cabin up there, and this group had a great time with him during this. This is the outside rock climbing wall, and on the good weather days, we were able to do it outside.
Is that you up there, Mr. Frazier?
At one time, I was there, you were a little bit higher than I was, if I recall.
Well, she had a rub that in.
Absolutely. I don't think I would be able to get to the top of that now, but it certainly was a great experience, and all of us students enjoyed taking the rest to do that. We had a new experience this year. There was a presentation called Native American Experience, and there was a Mohawk Native American there who gave a presentation to all the students on Native dance and also Native culture. I was very impressed, and I think all of our students were too. It was, again, some of them being from the Shinnecock Nation were also a part of that discussion with this Mohawk Native American who really gave them a great perspective, not only about the Shinnecock Nation, but about other nations in our country, and how they come together in powwows and use this dance from a very traditional point of view, cultural point of view, to express themselves and their culture. And he did an amazing job with our students, the most interactive, hands-on kind of activity that they had the whole time they were at Cross Valley. Okay, this is the geology part, and they were actually able to find different kinds of sedimentary rock and actually make paint from the sedimentary rock. So it was a lot of fun. This experience really does bring our students together, and it's an experience that they remember and talk about years from when they do it. And again, I just feel very excited to present this to you after this is our 18th year at Cross Valley. It only gets better, it seems. So I just thank you as board members for supporting us at the intermediate school and this trip and our students. A lot of you I know have gone on this trip and experienced it. And I will be talking further with you, I think, in the future about how we can better support our students to go on this trip, the students and their families to afford it and to continue to make it a very rich part of the culture here at Southampton Intermediate School.
Are you thinking about fall again next year?
Actually, we have scheduled a time on a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday before Halloween. They have a very special week up at Cross Valley before Halloween, and I think we're really looking forward to having that experience with our students. Again, this is the cafeteria, dining hall, as you can see. It gives us a chance to sit and eat with our students. Miss Noelle Rosa Skaggs, who's a new science teacher, went with us this year, and I think she fell in love with Cross Valley. And the experience with her students was, I wish she was here tonight, because it was amazing.
Well, that's right in her wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's Pasquale with his green sweatshirt. I don't think he got a Frost Valley one this year, but maybe next year he'll get us a Frost Valley.
No, I have several.
Again, it's a great, one of the nice things about having a smaller group, and again, we were there with a middle school that had how many students there from New Jersey? There was like, they had 150s.
They had 150 something.
And Cross Valley, their administration was so impressed by our students and how they behaved themselves, how they had manners, how they really supported each other in this process, because they were responsible for setting up the tables, for serving each other, and for cleaning up every meal that they had at Cross Valley. And they did it in an amazing way, especially compared to the other middle school that was up there. Again, beautiful setting any time of the year, but the fall seems to be a time when things really do come together for groups that are out at Cross Valley. Gaga Pit there, and that's the idea that came back to Southampton, and we have a Gaga Pit right out in the back of our building. So kids have a great time. And you got to experience other students at other schools in a competitive way in the Gaga Pit. Happy faces all around. Okay, thank you so much for giving me time to talk about my students.
Thank you, Tim. I'm not sure Dr. Zahn has any pictures of Wednesday night's forum, but it was a great event that Brian worked really hard and was all consumed for at least 2 weeks in planning for it. And I'm going to ask Brian, I know 4 of the board members were present at it, but I'm going to ask Brian to give us an overview and also talk about the exciting news we heard today.
Great, thank you very much, Dr. Dando. So one thing that we have been trying to really educate our students community on is the issue of the vaping epidemic and how prevalent it is in our schools, in our communities, and across the country. We know that high schools in particular, we're seeing a lot more with our middle schools as well, are on the front lines of the current vaping epidemic. With that, we had a coalition of people come together to really take on this issue head on. And most importantly, one of the major, I guess, components of our group or our own students in the building that represent our chapter of the Southampton Against Destructive Decision-Making group, and that's our SAD students. So we had a team that came together that consisted of our students representing SAD. We also had national presenters, one being a scientist that was working for Big Tobacco and later became one of the first major whistleblowers to take on Big Tobacco back in 1994, presented by, and his name was Victor DeNoble. And we also had a medical professional that really is on the front lines of this from Stanford University, and her name was Bonnie Halper Flesher. So she joined us along with some bipartisan policy advisors, politicians, and also a group of attorneys, again, that really had no, they really came together for the first time at these events. And these were attorneys that were from around the country that are also taking on the issue of vaping in schools and taking the fight to Juul, another big e-cigarette company. So we've had their support as well. So teaming up with East Hampton High School and this coalition of students and people, we held very successful town halls here in the first one on October 2nd in East Hampton, and then October 3rd in Southampton High School. Happy to report that we weren't sure in terms of the turnout because of some of these events that we've had in the past. So we set up, based on numbers that we saw in East Hampton the night before, and based on just the turnout that we've had from other events, we set up somewhere around 75 seats, hoping to fill them, and we filled more than double that. We actually wound up with the chairs that we put out with almost 200 seats out, and it was still only standing room, which was amazing. So we had just an incredible turnout to hear from, and the public came out because they heard our cries in terms of we need help, and came out to hear from our students, our national presenters, and others that night. So with that, we want to make sure that that this fight just doesn't stop there. Again, we're committed to really ending the vaping epidemic that is plaguing our young people, and taking the fight nationally and to the companies that are really kind of targeting our young people to make millions of dollars at the expense of our taxpayers, funneling monies from programs to help combat this epidemic. So with that, after the very successful town halls that we had, I traveled into New York City with some of the people from the town hall, and we had a couple of different meetings set up. We first met with some senior executive producers from NBC who represented the Today Show, 60 Minutes, Dateline, and some other prominent NBC news shows that are out there. And we really strategized on concepts on how to bring this fight onto the national stage. And they were very, very supportive of some of the pleas that we were sharing with them. And certainly we strategized on some great concepts that we're working on to bring this forth to the national stage. One of the other places that we visited was the New York State Attorney General's office in Lower Manhattan. We had an audience with her, senior staff in terms of framing out what we're experiencing in schools, what they're seeing across the country. And I think after speaking with NBC, speaking with the Attorney General's office, it's evident that people just don't understand the scope of the epidemic, particularly in high schools and middle schools. And it was very eye-opening what we've shared with them. So much so that today I was actually contacted by the New York State Attorney General's office, and I was invited back to actually meet with the Attorney General, Letitia James, on October 23rd. So I'll be heading back into New York City, into the Attorney General's office to have an actual audience with her herself, which is just amazing. So what's next? Again, our goal is to continue the advocacy, the education, and in some cases with the work of some of these attorneys, the litigation in terms of trying to recoup monies that schools are having to divert to attack the vaping epidemic at the expense of taxpayers. The other piece is, in terms of some of the advocacy that we're doing, is our students teaming up with East Hampton students and others are in the midst of writing an op-ed piece that we have had some really good kind of friendly handshake discussions that may be published in national papers such as the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. So again, trying to get these things out. We're also, again, strategizing with NBC on some upcoming national broadcasts of some town halls that our students will participate in. Also trying to get pieces on different audiences. Again, Today's Show for one type of audience and nightly news shows for the others. And we have some great strategies on how to go about and do that. And I think that's something we can get done. Also, we're continuing the education piece. I know that a bunch of our students, particularly in the health classes, had the honor of working with Victor DeNoble and Bonnie Fletcher from Stanford. But we didn't get that to all of our students who experienced that. And I think we had a tremendous kind of appreciation for some of the information that Victor DeNoble is specifically brought to our students. So we're working to hopefully bring him back this year to continue working with our kids as well. Additionally, our SAG group is not just looking at the national level, but they're also looking at our school and bringing some additional programming to our students throughout the course of the year. So we're going to continue that education piece. And again, we're sitting back and looking at some of the work that the attorney is doing on really going after the e-cigarette companies, because, again, as they said, there was clearly a premeditated murder by marketing in terms of really marketing these products to students as young as 13 years old and getting a whole generation of our kids addicted to nicotine. So again, what was once, we were at a low just a couple of years ago in terms of the number of students, the number of people in general that were using nicotine-based products. Now we're at an all-time high, and especially that all-time high is coming from students at the ages between 19 and 21, which is downright scary. So there's a lot of work that still has to be done. We are working really hard. And again, I just have to give a big shout out to our students in SAD under the leadership of Nature Richard. Particularly, we have Lauren Heaney, who is the founder of the SAD chapter, Issa Raffard, Grace Kearns, we have Jordan Haddix, we have Alani Robinson, Catherine Ordonez, all these students that are really rallying and coming together to take on this battle in a very courageous way, because right now, the reality is, and what we've been saying is that more than 65 to 70% of our students, and we're hearing this, and I'm hearing this from high school principals across the county, they are heavily addicted to these items. So this is not a popular move from our students in the SAD chapter right now. But again, as they continue to work, we're seeing the courageous efforts of them. More and more people are coming out to join on this initiative, and we know that it's hopefully going to spread. So a lot of work that is being done with our students, and again in general, and hopefully we can take the fight back to these big companies that are attacking our kids and marketing to our kids. So.
The numbers, have they increased this year, or have they just become addicted at this point? The same kids?
Numbers of
Kids, our kids in Southampton.
that are well, I'll tell you one thing that kids are doing is they're becoming much more savvy with concealing and keeping it hidden. I can tell you that much. So don't let numbers in terms of what you're seeing in terms of us having to issue discipline and other things, don't let them fool you, because again, speaking with students firsthand, those that are vapors and non-vapors, the numbers are out of control. What we are seeing is that we're seeing more students coming into the high school that are using these products than before. So we've clearly seen from our freshman students a number of kids, and we're hearing just speaking with them, a number of kids that are using these products even before they're hitting the high school. So I think, again, the other piece that we're hearing is that we have more and more kids that are coming out working with our social worker that we hired this year that, again, has a background in substance abuse training, that kids are actually coming to her and to us before we're coming to them, stating that they have an issue, that they're trying to stop and they just can't stop. And that's part of the problem that we have. We have kids that are heavily addicted to this stuff, and they're becoming heavily addicted before they even realize it because of the high levels of concentration of nicotine. And again, we have kids that are going through 1 to 3 pods a day. That's equivalent to 1 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day, which is downright scary. So I think what we're seeing is more kids are coming forward and talking about this. They're not having to wait to come to us. We have more kids stepping up to the plate, again, vapors and non-vapors that are calling for help. So that's one thing that we're seeing this year.
The Attorney General that you spoke with was surprised that this was such an epidemic? Or
I'm sorry, say that question one more
You
time.
spoke with the Attorney General, correct? And they were surprised that this was.
They're not surprised in terms of the vaping issue, but they did not realize that it was such an issue in our high schools and for young people. They're looking at the illness, they're aware of the illnesses that are going on, and they believe this was more of two things. They believe that it was a white middle class issue, which clearly it's not, and we explained that. And they believe that the issue was more for people in their mid-20s to mid-40s. They had no idea of the impact and the siege that high schools, in particular now middle schools, were under. It was eye-opening to them to hear some of the experiences from myself, and I went with insight not only from Southampton and East Hampton, but as you know, I'm working very closely, executive member of the Southampton Principals Association. This is the number one thing on our list. In Suffolk County, and working even with Nassau County, and again, we have people, and again, some of the attorneys from around the country that are working with their local school districts that are completely overwhelmed by this issue. And I think that's something that no one, whether it was some of the parents we're speaking to, NBC, the AG's office, no one understood or really understands the gravity of the situation in our schools. They're starting to now.
And I will tell you, I think it was a great event the other night, and Brian was willing to take this on. As I said, here we are in the 5th week of school with all the issues that face opening the school appropriately. And Brian was willing to take this on with all the preparation work that happened with this. And in addition to that, many schools are afraid to admit that there's a problem and they try to downplay it because of the fear of how the public will react. And Brian, you with your students, you took this head on, and you have students talking about it, you have the staff talking about it, and most importantly, you had parents there listening and understanding the problem. So I really appreciate all that you did for this, and I'm grateful that you were willing, you and the students were willing to see this as much as you did.
Yeah, and again, I have to give it to our students, because that took a great deal of courage to do what they did. Again, 1 week, and things that really kind of happened very fast. So working with the kids who were very excited, who never really had an opportunity to speak in a forum like that, and all of a sudden, with very little preparation, we're up in front of cameras, we're up in front of 200 people, and willing to not only did they get through that experience, but it almost energized them even more, and they're hungry for more to take the fight on.
Well, and you and Susan and Sarah were all great in speaking about the experiences you had in school with it, so again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really love that, that this is being led by the children, because I feel like this is a situation where the adults are learning from the children. I find that in some of the experiences I've had with other parents, a lot of parents think it's not my child would never do that. And unfortunately, it's so rampant right now that you have to be able to say, it could be my child, and do what we can to protect them. And the fact that these students are mobilizing together and leading this challenge with your assistants and other adults is really fantastic. So thank you.
I have a question.
Put your microphone on.
Meet with my 8th grade students to have a conversation with them in the near future, because I was able to go to East Hampton one too, and I know my daughter goes to East Hampton High School, and I know that they're having the same kinds of issues that we're having. And a big focus for their students is getting the information out to students in the middle school and how important that's going to be.
I would love that for 7th and 8th. I'm sorry, Mr. Sally.
Yeah, have you ever thought about bringing somebody in that has already been affected physically and presented to the students, maybe one of their own peers, to show them the effects of what happens when you vape?
Yeah, so the closest that we've come to that is each year, we bring in, people that, I don't wanna say it's from AA helps us out with it, but it's people that have had, various different types of addictions. Last year, students heard from, one young person that was heavily addicted to smoking marijuana and also smoking cigarettes, and spoke, in terms of some of those issues. So I think that's the closest that we've come to that. We try to, and I think the one thing that we hear from our kids is we've brought in a number of presenters and adults to speak to our kids. Kids don't want to hear from adults. They
No,
don't.
they want to, I'd like to see somebody that actually has been physically affected by it and show them what the effects are, face to face.
Yeah.
And then another question, are you finding that there is any ability of the students from this school district to do vaping on school grounds?
Of course, there's tons of vaping on school grounds. That's what we're trying to find. And the reality is, what we're finding is that the vaping issues become so prevalent that we have kids that can't even make it through a class, a 40-minute session, without having to leave the class, or what we're learning from students coming forward is just very discreetly even vaping in our classrooms. So it's a major issue in terms of the vaping that's taking place on school grounds. Where, and my thing is, I know that might sound shocking, but I want it to sound shocking because it's a reality. People need to understand that's an issue that is taking place right now. That we have kids that can't even make it through a 40-minute period without having to, number one, take chances of vaping in classrooms, going to bathrooms, going to other places, leaving the classroom to try and do that. So it's happening, and the reality is we're up against things such as there are actual companies out there right now that are selling vape clothing, where all you have to do is hide your vape in your sweatshirt, and what looks like a drawstring is actually a vape string. We have kids that, as easy as doing this, are sitting there vaping, not only in school, but I can guarantee you, are vaping in households, in homes, and parents, right under people's noses, and they don't even realize.
Yeah, but vaping is something that there is almost like a fog that comes from it, so it's not something that they can totally hide just by doing that.
In the original vapes that originally came out, they were meant with those big plumes of vape and smoke. But when you look at what Juul did, Juul was designed to give a very small amount out, again, for the purpose of being discreet and hiding it. So the reality is, I guarantee you, if I wanted to, or a vapor, which I'm not, but if I wanted to, I guarantee you that even in this board meeting, I would be able to discreetly do that without you being able to see. And that's what's happening in our homes and our schools.
And not just, it's not homes, it's all over. It's all over. You can go out to a restaurant.
Homes, parks.
I mean, you go to a restaurant where it's totally legal and then people sit there and pay.
Heck, I was sitting on a plane. I was on a plane not too long ago.
Now they're leaving out.
Yeah. And there were literally people sitting in their seats, vaping on the plane. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Sitting in their seats, vaping on a plane. That's where we are right now.
I don't know if anyone's over Tuesday tonight, she told us about. And Long Island School District, one of 3 nationwide to announce a lawsuit against manufacturer Juul.
Correct. I believe that was 3 Village, correct?
3 Village School District.
Correct. 3 Village actually teamed up with one of the attorneys we work with to do that. And so 3 Village again basically contracted with them, and the way that they do is it's no cost to the district, but what they do is the district signs up with them again, and these are attorneys and law firms that are very well have an established way of going about this now. They represent the school district, and they try to recoup funds that are being diverted. These firms have come up with an economic model that really kind of highlights the cost that is being put on school districts. And again, if there are monies recouped for the school district, that's how they pay out the attorneys, that's how it's working. But yeah, they're working with, Revillage is working with one of the attorneys that have joined in on this fight.
It was also reported today that the first 17-year-old in New York State, died from vaping-related illness.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. And again, the last thing I want to report on has to do with the Wall of Distinction induction ceremony that happened on Friday night. 4 people were honored and recommended to be placed on the electronic Wall of Distinction. They were James Carlton Corwin, who was a former board member, John B.H. Halsey, Jackie Lamb, and William Masterson. And the 4 people were recognized in a very nice ceremony that happened on Friday evening, attended by a couple hundred people, and it was just a very heartwarming and nice experience to hear the accomplishments of people and the dedication of people, including our very own Jackie Lamb. So it was a pleasure to be at that event.
And a wonderful speech. Love that speech, Jackie.
She's not a third.
No, but Jackie speaks, as she says, from the heart.
From the
She
heart.
spoke from her heart, and she had that whole audience listening to her on every
Yeah.
word, which was amazing. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's my report.
We'll move on to the Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mr. Mingo.
Good evening, everyone. The Audit and Finance Committee met this past Friday. One of the major topics of discussion was the fund balance for the year end 2018-2019. So to give you some visual aid, I put together a small presentation, a short presentation, that also will serve me as some talking points. So if you recall from the spring, the property tax levy that was set by the voters was $58,699,051. That amount was $250,000 below the maximum amount that we could have gone out with. The final tax levy for 2018-2019 was $56,871,37. Which was a year-over-year increase of $1.8 million or 3.21% increase. The fund balance for this year, after our accountant did all of the computations, we went over all the expenses, we went over all the revenues generated by the district, including the tax levy revenues. So the fund balance was $4.1 million. And the fund balance is made up of 2 components. So it's the additional revenues that was generated. Again, when I do the budget, basically I do an estimation. The tax levy is pretty much predictable once the voters vote on it and it passes. But there are other components of the budget or the revenue that are estimations. For example, the tuition from other districts, the tuition from Native American, the tuition from Tuckahoe for mostly our high school students. So throughout the year, as we generate the revenue and the rates change, the amounts change. And ultimately, when I'm doing the projections for the budget, I tend to be somewhat conservative in the numbers because, again, what I don't want to happen is predict that we're going to generate $5 million from Tuckahoe and then end up generating $4 million. So I rather predict on the lower end and then generate more revenue. So in terms of the revenue, we generated $1.8 million over what was predicted, and $500,000 of that revenue came from interest payment. Throughout the year, I've been negotiating with our bank, the Bridgehampton National Bank, so we actually did get a higher interest rate, which generated that additional $500,000 in interest. And as I mentioned with the tuition, we also generated more money in tuition, and that's a combination of things. That's a combination of the rates changing for the Native Americans, because at the time that I do the projections, I had one rate, and at some point in the year, the rates change, and it's usually an increase in the rates. So that also generated additional revenue. And we also have miscellaneous other sources of revenue, such as we have a number of health services. For example, we do billing for students that attend OLH from other districts. We provide them with health services, and we bill those districts for those services. We also had revenues for building use. We also sell fuel to, I believe, Sag Harbor and another district. So those are other sources of revenues that are not easily predictable throughout the year. On the expense side, we also did have some saving, and that has to do with a number of factors. Salary accruals is a part of it. So throughout the year, you have people who go out on leave. You have people who retire, and you hire people at a lower salary. So those pieces add up, to significant dollars at some point. We also had lower expenses. If you remember, it was a very mild winter last year, so there wasn't as much overtime as far as the facilities is concerned. We had savings from the transportation department, lower payments for our high cost or high need students. When I do the budget in the spring, I have to estimate at a higher level because I can't predict exactly how many of those students that I'm going to send out of district for services. So I have to try to estimate it at a high level. And at the end of the year, then you reconcile the numbers. And also we have attrition throughout different departments. So after meeting with the Audit and Finance Committee, we made decisions on how to apportion that fund balance. So $2 million or $2,082,000 to be exact is being allocated through the 10-year capital reserve. Dr. Dino spoke about Mr. De Silva doing a presentation for the board at the next meeting. And he's going to talk about some of the future projects, capital projects that we have upcoming and that we need to set aside money for. We also set aside money, $530,000 to the Teachers Retirement Contribution Reserve, which is a brand new reserve that you recently established by a board vote. And we are capped at 2% of the teacher TRS members' salaries per year. So that 2% amounted to about $530,000. We also allocated $1 million to the repair reserve. And we spoke earlier about the wet lab that is in significant repair that we have to address immediately. And we were thinking about doing a public hearing to actually take out some money out of the repair reserve to address the wet lab. $500,000 is being allocated toward reducing the tax levy. So we want to adjust the tax levy down, meaning that the tax rate for the taxpayers in Southampton will go down after I make the adjustment and submit it to Town Hall in the next couple of weeks. So the initial budget, tax levy budget voted by the voters was $58,698,051. So now it's being reduced to $58,199,051, $500,000 lower. And we have the customary 4% set aside based on the total budget of $71,908,000. That amount is pretty much carried over from year to year. It's increased very slightly because of the difference in the total budget, but it's pretty much an amount that's low over the year. I believe Mr. King asked me about the TAN the other day. So the rate was 2%. We had a rate of 2% on $16 million borrowing, which amounted to a total interest of $245,333. However, we got a premium because of our AAA bond rating. A lot of the investment firms compete to get our business, and as a result of that, they offer us a premium of $88,802. which means the net income interest that we'll pay is $156,000, meaning that the net interest rate is 1.27, which is an excellent rate for the district to have. And if you recall during my presentation in the spring, I put together FAQ for the taxpayers. What is the dollar amount of the proposed budget? That doesn't change. From the spring, it's $71,908,015. What is the dollar amount of the previous year, meaning 2018, 2019? It was $70,436,000. So the net change year over year was 1.4. So because of the reduction, again, with the $500,000 being a portion, the rate will go down. The overall tax rate will go down further from what it was in the spring. In May, we had a net dollar increase of 1.8 million. Now the net dollar increase is 1.3 million. What is the percentage increase? So in May, the percentage was 3.21. Now the year-over-year increase has been reduced to 2.33%. At the time that I was doing the budget, the maximum tax levy that I was allowed under the state guidelines was $58,949,051. And at this point, we're pretty much $750,000 below that amount, meaning that we're not taxing at the maximum amount that we could have taxed. What will be the dollar amount of school tax to be paid by an average single family house under the proposed 2019-2020 school budget? In May, it was $3,325.75. Now it's $3,257.72. And I just want to make the distinction that this is not what you're going to have in your overall tax bill. This is the school portion of the tax bill. We're not responsible for the rest of the other taxes. So basically, the change from May in terms of the reduction is it went from negative $137.66 in May now to $205.69, a net reduction in the tax rate. So the net reduction in terms of percentage in the single family is negative 5.94%, which is down from negative 0.397%. So again, the reason why the tax rate tends to go down from year to year is because of the property assessment. The value of the net value of all the taxable properties in Southampton went up. The last percentage increase was 8.6%. So in comparison to the tax rate, the value is going at a higher pace than the tax rate. So in net, the tax rate is lower year to year. And now I'll take any questions.
Thank you. I was lucky enough, I got to sit in on audit and finance this week. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one. As far as the repair reserve, I know you mentioned the wet lab needing attention. Are there any other big ticket items that we're expecting for next year?
Well, the repair reserve is actually more likely to be used for this year, and the capital reserve is what we tend to look at in terms of the longer term. So, Mr. De Silva will be doing a presentation at the next board meeting, so he'll have a list of all the projects that he has on the docket.
He's going to go along with 3 to 5 year plan.
No, I was thinking actually 2020 this year, this year, I wasn't thinking.
Well, I know he was, I know Mr. De Silva talked a little bit about the demolition of the district office. I think that figure that he threw around was around 160,000. That included, well, you know, you're doing some asbestos work, I guess you're going to take out the sidewalks in front of the environmental issues, the actual demolition, filling the cesspool, and restoring it to, you know, grass. You the process right now, I guess, of decommissioning phones and other wirings and stuff like that, so that's 160 right there.
Okay. Where are we with the air conditioners, the condensers, I know we replaced them.
Well, again, that's gonna be for next summer, it's in the state right now getting approval in order to do that.
For the third floor at the elementary school, second floor.
Thank you.
Are we doing that for what? Are we gonna try to put something together?
I think Marcus still working on it, Marcus and the board.
Marcus, get prior to Marcus' presentation, like.
Kind of. Yeah.
So people can try.
Yeah, we put it on hold, we were trying not to rush it all in before school started, but now, it's on the 22nd.
Yeah.
Would you mind sending an email to see, or ask Marcus what he's available, and then we can go from there. So does anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Mingo before we move on to?
I don't think I'll ask a question, obviously, I was there at the meeting. I just want to congratulate Mr. Minow on, I think, outstanding work that you've done putting this together. Again, I know a little bit about the numbers behind what he was rattling off there. And, again, the revenue side for this district is something that's really hard to predict. And again, the 1.8 million additional revenue, we're very thankful for, but that kind of helped us out. Again, I think the bottom line for the taxpayers would be that, you're reducing your budget to, again, the number was, Gene, $750,000 below the tax cap that you had. So, I mean, I think that's what they have to understand. We're doing everything we can to hold the cost down.
And quickly, I have 3 items on the agenda tonight, so the fund balance that I just spoke about, we established the tax levy. And then one more item is, there is a resolution to establish a Roth IRA, which is another option for teachers to save toward retirement. It comes at no cost to the district. This is something that our benefit administrator Omni already offered, but we just needed to take action. So if teachers or any employee want to take advantage of that, it's a post-tax option that they have toward retirement versus the pre-tax option of the 403B and the New York State deferred compensation that we already offer. So this is just another one, an option for them to save for retirement.
I just wanted to, excuse me, offer my congratulations, thanks to Mr. Mongo. To pull in a rate in this current bond market where we did is incredible. And I hope the taxpayers take note of the sound fiscal position that this district is and has continued for a number of years. So I'd like to kind of congratulate you on the job well done.
That was, that was last time? I thought you said you had 3 minutes.
Very quick.
Everybody up? We'll move on to committees and board committees and advisory committees. The academic senate, were we able to find the date?
Yes, October 18th is the first meeting of the academic senate, and Anastasia and Jim are the seated members, regular members of that committee. So one of the things that we wanted to discuss was which of the other board members would like to sit in as the third member, as that rotational member. It is going to be held on October 18th from 8:30 in the morning to 3 p.m. So.
Which is a Friday, I don't know if that counts me out.
7 a.m.
It's not 7 a.m.
It's 8:30.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm not available that day, so.
No,
They started at 7,
8:30.
at 8:30.
Well, I think there's 4 academic senate meetings. Right now, the first one is set for October 18th. There's going to be further discussion about the remaining 3 meetings as to what dates they're going to be held on. I know there's some discussion about whether or not to hold them on a Friday or a Saturday, so that's still in the process.
I thought we were going to discuss it in person.
So those dates, we can't, unfortunately, we can't sit here tonight and figure out the rotation for the remaining 3, but if you guys would like to let us know who would be interested in attending the first one on the 18th, we can at least get that third seat filled for that first meeting, if anyone is available and interested.
I cannot attend.
Initially I was, but I can't now. I've done the commitment.
Mr. Styler, it's October 18th from 8:30 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. It's the academic civic.
It looks like right now, no one. Do you want?
I can't hear that side of the house.
Yeah, that is my bad.
October 18th, so far no one is available to go for the academic senate. Would you like to?
On October 18th.
Yeah, it's a Friday from 8:30 to 3.
Can't do it Friday.
Okay, we have to go to May.
Okay. Take good notes for us, please.
I believe this is, we're going to be sending out an email, with more information about that first meeting to you guys, so just be able to look at it.
Okay, we just covered audit and finance, and everything was good there. The next meeting is, I don't know. Jean, you'll send out a reminder for the next meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. District Office Committee, we have no new reports yet, that's going to start in after the new year. Facilities, we did have a nice meeting with Mr. De Silva, and I look forward to him coming to give a presentation at the next meeting. As Mr. McKenna said, that he is looking to capital projects for next year, getting rid of the whole district office, going district-wide with the access cards, perhaps doing it building by building, replacing drop ceilings in classrooms in the elementary school, replacing RTUs over the girls and boys locker room here at the intermediate school, and some other things that he will have more information on. As far as the oceanography room, there is a lot of decay going on due to the salt water that's up there. So before it becomes a major issue, we need to get some work done up there. Did anybody have any questions about facilities? Personnel Committee met on the September 25th and October 1st, and we went through all of the candidates for tonight. Policy meeting, Policy Committee, meeting on September 25th.
We met on the 25th of September. We actually, this evening, I'd recommend that, expediting adoption of policy 5151, homeless children for second reading tonight, and we'd like to adopt, and the regulation, and the 5152 admission of non-resident students. Also, we're recommending that we retire 3 policies, the 5420, and as an example, the 5422, and the 5420-2E2. And this is the request for religious exemptions for immunizations, which now the state has a law in place which we have to follow. I'd like to thank Amy for your red lines. I love it. Makes it a lot easier when we read through, to make it easier for the board. And if it's without, I'd like to, put it in the form of motion that we approve these now. If there's a problem with the policies, I hope the board members have read them, and I hope that, we can move this evening.
May I have a motion to adopt policy 5151, homeless children, policy 5151R, homeless children regulation, and policy 5152, admission of non-resident students as presented.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to retire policy 5420E1, New York State immunization requirements for school entrance attendance, policy 5420.2, requests for religious exemption from immunization, and policy 5420.2E.2, requests for religious exemption from immunization as presented.
So moved.
Second?
I don't think we're retiring 5420E1, that's just that's the schedule.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there is a policy.
it's a part of the policy, we have to retire it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you look at that, the attachment to that, that's actually an outdated list anyway, it's not current. And as we discussed in policy, it was recommended by NISBA that we do that, and by legal advice that we
So
don't.
right now, I remember that.
And what about 5420.2E.2?
That's actually a form, that's
So
a,
you're retired?
no, we do, it's a request for, yeah, that's what the motion was for, is to retire that, that was for the request. That's the request for religious exemption from immunization form.
No, I know, but I didn't hear her say that.
No, she did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read it again?
No.
Okay. So did I have a motion?
Got all of that. Got four. It's actually three.
Let's move it.
Motion,
So it's already
Second.
in.
all in favor?
Aye.
You are correct.
We're just
No. No, you're correct. 5420 is E1,
the
5420.2.
5420E1, I didn't read.
Okay, you know what we're missing? I apologize. In her motion, you're correct, was missing the 5420.2-R, the regulation for religious exemption from immunization regulation. So, yeah, you do. That's first.
Oh, it's on this.
So what's missing from the motion was 5420.2-R, request for religious exemption from immunization regulation. So,
May I have a motion to retire policy 5420E2-R?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Anastasia.
sorry for that confusion, thank you, Anastasia.
Are there any consent agenda items from 11.01 through 11.30 that any member wishes to discuss or has questions as presented in the agenda? Are the committees? So, Infrastructure Committee met on September 25th.
Would you like a very brief report?
Sure.
We had a consultant concerning security of our computer systems that met with the committee to discuss looking over our systems to make sure we're up to date.
From West Starbucks.
Yes.
And just as a follow-up, Mr. McGowan and I received the information from them regarding the scope of work that they've done, that they can do for us, that they've done in other districts, as well as references of what they've done in districts. So I'd like to present that at the next meeting so we can proceed, determine how we're going to proceed.
Thank you.
The Communications Committee
Hasn't met.
haven't met yet. Special Education Committee has not met yet. And the Code of Conduct Task Force,
We're waiting for the
Waiting.
new system as well.
okay. Now are we ready for consent agenda items? Are there any consent agenda items from 11.01 through 11.30 that any member wishes to discuss or has questions as presented in the agenda? May I have a motion to approve item 11.01 to,
Actually,
yeah?
Are you gonna ask for hold aside?
Yes.
That's what she's asking.
Because, and I'll say, don't even go any further. I'd like to see 11.01 and 11.02 done by recorded motions. Sincere capital projects and spending taxpayers' money.
Yeah, that
I'm
was
sitting
my
here,
next statement. So may I have a motion to approve item 11.01 to apply the 2019-2020 fund balance of $4,112,819 as presented in the agenda with a roll call vote. May I have a motion?
You don't need a motion. When the motion moves them. You don't need a motion to pull it out. Because I dissented for a capital, for a consent agenda item, I dissented and I want to see it full. And it's the right of any board member to do that, so you don't really need a motion to do it.
She's asking for a motion to approve it with a separate vote.
I would just like a separate vote on those.
Yeah, that's what she just made a motion to approve it with a separate roll call.
Your motion was to pull it off the consent.
No,
agenda.
her motion was to approve it
item.
with a roll call vote.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
That's okay.
All right, so I will move it then, if it's approval of that. And I apologize.
That's okay. May I have a second? Second. Will the clerk please call the roll for the vote?
Anastasia Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Donald King.
Yes.
Michael Medio.
Yes.
James McKenna.
Yes.
Jacqueline Robinson.
Yes.
Sunie Sherwood Dudley.
Yes.
And Charles Silent.
Yeah.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve 11.02 to set the tax rate of 2.03999 per $1,000 of assessed valuation and adopt the tax levy for the 2019-2020 school year of $58,199,051 as presented in the agenda with a roll call vote. May I have a motion? Second? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anastasia Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Donald King.
Yes.
Michael Media.
Yes.
James McKenna.
Yes.
Jacqueline Robinson.
Yes.
Sunie Sherwood Dudley.
Yes.
And Charles Silent.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other consent agenda items from 11.03 through 11:30 that any member wishes to be held out for separate action as presented in the agenda?
I just have a question.
Sure.
Dr. Dunn, 11.06 to 11.09 is talking about sports agreements. Some of those sports have already started, correct? I'm
Yes.
just wondering why it's coming to the board's attention at this time.
Because what happens when we have these shared agreements, it has to go through our set of attorneys, according to the other district, go through their set of attorneys, and it takes a while. This has been a process since August. It's just now finally made the circle of all sets of attorneys
Got it.
from the other districts and returned us to us, and it's ready for work.
And are any of these new agreements, or we did these last year as well? Didn't we have football? I forget who shared and how. who
We
shared.
did share, I'm not sure it's with all the same districts for football,
Okay,
and I'm also not sure if we did gymnastics last year, exactly.
we did gymnastics.
Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then that's continuation.
I think the only new one is the varsity girls cross country. That's with Virginia.
Yes, that is.
That's a new one this year.
All right, no, I didn't know why they were coming to us,
Yeah.
And if we're doing them next year, will they come late again, or will we just be?
Well, it depends on the other district's request to share, and then they know.
Oh, okay.
So it's all, they have to decide.
Year,
What kids are
year
interested.
by year, I guess,
We have
right?
to, not just season by season. And like the season could be starting, and then there's one child from Bridgehampton who wants to be on the team.
Oh,
So then
okay,
the process has to start all over.
okay.
I asked the same question the other day, and of course, one of them stated for July, like the first of July, and so we're just getting it now, so it's what it is.
Okay, understood.
And then what makes it complicated is our firm is the same firm as one of the districts we participate in. So they have to go through all the checks and balances to make sure there's permission
Yeah.
for them to represent both districts without a conflict of interest, and it complicates it.
Thank you.
If without objections, items 11.03 through 11.30 are hereby approved as presented in the agenda. Are there any financial items from 12.01 through 12.08 that any member wishes to discuss or has questions as presented in the agenda? Are there any consent agenda items from 12.01 through 12.08 that any member wishes to be held out for separate action as presented in the agenda? If without objections, items 12.01 through 12.08 are hereby approved as presented in the agenda. Under 13.01, does any member wish to discuss or have questions on items 1 through 5 or A as presented? Does any member wish to have a separate action on any items 1 through 5 or A as presented? If without objection, items 1 through 5 and A are hereby approved as presented. Under 13.02, does any member wish to discuss or have questions on items 6 through 58 and B through C as presented? Under 13.02, does any member wish to have a separate action on items 6 through 58 and B through C as presented? If without objection, items 13.02, 6 through 58, and B through C are hereby approved as presented. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 17th, 2019, the regular meeting, and September 25th, 2019, special meeting as presented? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Unfinished business. Does anybody have any discussions for unfinished business? Okay, public comments? Anyone? Anyone?
Well, I'm looking at you, Roseanne, because I hear you're representing here the intermediate school PTO, so are there any announcements or anything you need to make? Thank you.
I put invitations.
Turn on your, there's a button on the thing.
I put invitations in front of all of your chairs, and that's our first multicultural dinner that we're going to be serving, a family dinner, and we're going to have entertainment, and the PTO is sponsoring it. We have all our teachers making dishes from their culture. Our children are going to be involved. They're going to be doing special dances, some singing, and I'm calling some parents to also make dishes, and we're sending out a flyer out this week in the 5-week notice that we're sending out to parents to ask if they would like to participate. So I'm inviting all of you, and I'm hoping that you will attend.
And the parents will be making the dishes in our kitchen here, like the regulations said, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So am I. And the other thing is bingo night on November 7th, that the PTO is doing. And I think that's it for PTO. And I'd just like to say thank you at this time to the Board of Education and Dr. Dino and Jean about our new shop teacher that I got to meet yesterday. He is wonderful. He's going to be doing the sets of Annie, or some of the sets of Annie. He's going to be making us a large staircase and 9 beds. I'm dropping 9 beds. I'm doing
His
it wrong.
working. Yeah, his students working. on
His
that.
students are
Yes.
wonderful. They're 4. And I remember some of them from our school, and they're just so happy to do it. And he greeted us, he greeted me and Mr. Farrell, and he didn't make us feel like, are you kidding me? You're giving me this now, and we have 2 weeks? You know, like that would be a normal reaction sometimes. I gave him 2 weeks.
That's a lot of lead time.
Oh my God. He said, if you bring me the wood by Monday, I'll have it to you by next Friday. That's how good they are. And then I told the students they can come to my house and practice any work that they would like to do, and they were wonderful. So I thank you for hiring and for helping those students, because I think it's a wonderful program. So thank you.
Yeah, and on that note, I'd just like to let the board know, Dr. Zahn and I spoke with Benny, who's going to be heading now the carpentry club, is that what we're calling it? And the mission of the carpentry club is not only to teach the students to make things, but they're making things that other students or the community can benefit from. So they'll be making some more buddy benches for the elementary school, some other type of apparatuses for the playground here, and they're gonna be making things that other students will get to use. So that's part of it.
Love it. And we've got an increase in enrollment, like there's kids that keep, I know one kid is looking into it. Has it
Yeah,
increased a little
so
bit?
in terms of our building trades
Right,
courses,
big culture,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, and again, I fully anticipate, remember, we tried, filling these courses long after our scheduling selections were done. So I have no doubt, just because of the impact that Mr. Diaz is making this year and the word that's spread, both programs, our two-year vocational BOCES program and our building trades courses, we're going to see nice, robust increases in enrollment.
And our neighboring districts are talking about it as well.
Correct.
Hopefully that'll result in some more students.
Can they still send though? Can other students still send?
Our doors are open at any time.
I love that.
Generally, by the end of October, you really see BOCES entrance kind of stop, because that's when, at the point where BOCES locks in their the cost for school districts, and it's more of like an average cost that they take now. So by the time of the end of October, you usually see BOCES enrollments are, number one, the programs have been going on, so it's very hard for students to access. But because of the pricing structure, that's when things usually stop in terms of new enrollments.
I'm wondering, even those 9 kids that you were talking about, those guidance, because you never know, they might be some of those kids that want to sort of go into that type of program to help them get into school and do somehow, somewhere.
Under unfinished business, or excuse me, new business, Mr. McKenna, did you want to mention briefly or?
The hour is late, I'll just make it, I gave you all a copy. I don't know what you get in your emails versus what I might get through BOCES, so I don't know if you've seen this sheet before tonight. The Nassau Suffolk School Boards has a dinner, it's always in Woodbury, which is a trek from here, so I didn't go to the dinner, I kind of wait till they send us what the resolutions are gonna look like, and pretty much I would support these, resolutions as the Nassau Suffolk would recommend, unless something happens when we're at the meeting in the morning, and we kind of, they'll make some addendums. Some of them have to do with, the funding of meal programs. It has to do, again, the topic that we had here, we discussed the allowing, one of them has to do with allowing school board to determine if their building should be used as polling places and elections. There's one here that has to do with special education costs. I tend to support and understand the resolutions that come out of the New York State School Boards Association. There are some resolutions, if you look, that are recommended by different boards for whatever the reason they have an issue. And again, I go with the recommendation of the Nassau Suffolk School Boards. There is another meeting, again, I don't know whether you got the notice on it or not. There's a rural school forum on the afternoon of October the 17th, and this seems like everything is in October. I will be there. It's from beginning at 4 o'clock.
HB Ward.
At HB Ward, yeah, it's, who's coming down? Is it Tim Kramer? No, David Little, the executive director of the Rural Schools Association, is coming down to do a presentation. So they're trying to get out into more rural type of forums. Dr. Donald, another forum that I know is going to be, or it's going to be some sort of session here on Long Island, I don't know if you've heard about it yet, that Nassau BOCES is going to host. It's called What Success Looks Like. I guess it's going to be a regional forum where they're going to highlight work with several of the school districts that have reduced or eliminated the achievement gap. So again, on all these things, they're trying to get people to share best practices, I guess. So
I don't know if anyone else, I didn't get those last HB Ward and that one that you just spoke about, we didn't get them via email.
I just got them today as well at a
okay.
meeting, so
You could share them.
But again, it's next Thursday, we got the Senate on, it's like, it kind of keeps coming after this time of the year. Okay, Mr. Robbins.
Great, thank you. I was just looking at my email to see if I got that. I didn't. Well, if there is no further need to return to executive session, I would like to ask for a motion.
Just one
Mr.
second,
King?
if you don't mind.
Of course.
I would like to, see, and it's something that, we had a presentation that was so factual tonight. Not to have something, and even a draft in the executive content, so that I could read it before we get here and digest some of it. And to have the presentation so the board members could have reviewed it, prior, so we can come with, questions. I mean, tonight there was a lot of information and, I'm not an educator, so I really sometimes have to digest these things and, wasn't given the opportunity. And it's, I'm not gonna take time to bother, the presenters with questions. I mean, it's an awkward thing because they're busy people. I would rather, if I hadn't been able to ask them this evening.
Anybody else? Then I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So,
Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
Welcome, have a good night, everyone.